Hi, I'm Kara-Leah from the Yoga Lunchbox, and today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Ben Ralston, who is a yoga teacher, and he's also a healer slash facilitator slash therapist who leads retreats. And we're going to talk today about the work that he does on those retreats. So welcome, Ben.
Hi, Kara-Leah.
Now, I know we talked about how to introduce you and this word healer, which is like you're kind of stepping away from, but what is the work that you're doing that is a healing work?
Okay, so I'm trained as a trauma healer. So for the last 6 years, I've been working with a lot of people healing their trauma.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is because I've done this work with you, and as I did, I mean, it was an incredible experience. I went from, in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, feeling absolute crap, to all of a sudden doing the work, going through these layers, and then feeling liberated. And as you and I have talked more about trauma, to me it feels like this gives us a practical, grounded way to liberate ourselves, to move towards self-realization. How would you describe trauma work?
Well, the way I look at it is that as human beings, we have this incredible potential. We're animals, but we're also spiritual beings. We have this potential to kind of elevate ourselves and become much more than we are at the moment as a species. And the thing that prevents us from being who we are or who we can be is trauma. It's really as simple as that. At some point in our evolution, we stopped doing what scientists call completing trauma. Excuse me. All wild animals complete trauma, so that if they experience trauma, they go through a process immediately afterwards of releasing it. They kind of howl and shake, and it's gone. And we stopped doing that. Probably we became self-conscious. Our egos got a little bit too big, and suddenly we started,
No more howling.
Very serious. No more howling. In fact, if you howl now, you get arrested, right? In Western society, anyway. So it's really the case of, for some generations now, our ancestors have not been processing and completing and healing, releasing trauma. So it's been accumulating, and science has proven through the science of epigenetics that we hand down our unresolved trauma to our children.
Now, so before we go on, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to get you to define the word trauma, because people won't necessarily know what you're talking about.
Okay, so basically a very simple definition of trauma is something that makes you feel unsafe. Could be something that happens to you. It might be that you witness, for example, a car accident, and it reminds you of your mortality, and in that moment you feel very deeply unsafe, and that can really affect somebody even more strongly than something that happens directly to them. So anything that makes you feel unsafe could potentially become trauma.
So it doesn't have to be the really big stuff like being attacked or sexual assault or being involved in a car accident. It's when you feel unsafe. Now, I imagine as children we would feel unsafe quite a lot of the time when it's not that much going on around us that would be perceived as traumatic, but we would be experiencing it as traumatic.
Yeah. The biggest trauma that I've come across in the last 6 years working with thousands of clients is not being paid enough attention when we were children. So, for example, if a parent is away a lot working, or the most common thing is if a parent is present physically but not really emotionally present with the child.
And how many children have parents who aren't actually present or conscious?
Pretty much all of them.
All of us. Right? Yeah.
I mean, there are a few exceptions, maybe, lucky exceptions, but most of us did not get that level, that quality of presence and attention from our parents. Not just because they weren't capable, they didn't know how. They weren't capable.
Why does it make us feel unsafe? Why does it make us feel unsafe when a parent figure around us is not fully present with us?
Because for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe millions of years, throughout human evolution, the safety of human children depended upon the extent to which the adults, the village or the tribe around them were paying attention. Let's go back 1,000 years or a few hundred years. If the adults around the child are not paying attention, maybe a wolf comes along, or the neighboring tribe and takes the child and makes them a slave, or the weather, you know, it could get very cold sometimes maybe. So the extent to which adults were paying attention literally defined how safe the child was. And our bodies haven't caught up to the fact that we're now the top of the food chain, that we live in warm houses, and that, you know, generally speaking, for most people, especially in the West, there aren't neighboring tribes that want to kind of steal you and take you. We're very safe now, but our bodies are going to need another few hundred or maybe a few thousand years to really catch up to that.
So that means, I guess, that most of us then have experienced trauma of one description of another, and I imagine very few of us completed that trauma. So how does that trauma then affect our day-to-day lives as adults if it's been uncompleted, if it's still in our system?
Well, most trauma is completely unconscious. If you know that something happened, so let's say, for example, somebody had a really bad car crash, or they were raped or abused in some way or another, and they know that that happened, even then, usually we suppress it. Even then we pretend we're okay. And the impact of the trauma, the way that it has affected us, becomes subconscious. So, for example, in the case of a car accident, what usually happens is the person freezes. That person knows they had a car accident, but what they don't realize is the deeply instinctive way in which their body reacted, i.e. freezing, to keep them safe. It's a safety survival instinct. So that then many things can happen in life which make them freeze, and they have no understanding of the connection between the accident. They may not even realize that they're freezing. They just know that they're very uncomfortable. They don't actually know what's happening. It's subconscious. And then you look at the majority of trauma, which is stuff that happened and people don't even realize that it happened. For example, the thing that we mentioned earlier, if your parents are not paying attention, if they're not present with you when you're a child, the child feels very unsafe, but there's no way that the child can understand what's actually happening. The child can't say, yeah, my father is not really paying attention and that makes me feel unsafe because ...
Yeah, right.
So then that child becomes an adult who simply doesn't feel safe. Deep down, the awareness that they are safe, because realistically they probably are very safe 99.9% of the time, the awareness of that safety is just not there. Instead, at a very deeply subconscious level, they feel unsafe, and then they're looking constantly for some kind of relationship, and it might be a relationship with a new house or a new car or a new partner or a new job that's going to pay more money to give them financial security. That person may constantly for the rest of their lives be looking and craving for security and safety, which is basically most people alive today. Most people are craving security. Now, if you look at it from the yogic perspective, chakras, for example, safety and survival is the first chakra. Yeah. Right? So a lot of people think that we're becoming more and more spiritually evolved and things are getting better. From my perspective, unless we do this trauma, this shadow work, things are not going to get better because we're still stuck, most of us, at least in some ways, at the level of the first chakra. We're still stuck at security.
That explains the world we live in. Because if we feel unsafe as children and those unsafe patterns get wired in and then we feel always unsafe as adults, then we're operating from a place of fear. When you operate from a place of fear, you create pretty much kind of the world we see out there today.
Yeah. Yeah. You create war, you create systems in society, medical systems and educational systems, political systems, environmental systems, ... which are not serving the best interests of the people or the environment, but are actually sort of serving the lowest common denominator. And at the same time, you have a lot of people who are not really living. They're not really fully alive. And instead, we are spending a lot of the time pretty much asleep, kind of switched off, half awake. Pretty zombie-like, sheeple, you know. Sheeple. And of course, then we're easy to be sold to. We're easy to be deceived and led and lied to. And then,
Especially
the
if
whole
you're always
thing goes
looking
on.
for security and safety, because you're always looking to have something or to earn something or to get something, so then you're easily controlled. So let's take it right back around. So you take people on a retreat for 7
Let me just
days.
interrupt you 1 second,
Yeah.
because there's something I'd like to say at that point. You're talking about having something. Most people are stuck on the level of doing in order to have. I'm going to work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do whatever I can in order to have whatever I think I need in order to feel how I think that's going to make me feel.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in this loop between doing and having and doing and having. And the whole point of this work is to get back to being.
Yeah.
That's why the title of my next retreat in Bali in October is Being-ness.
Mm-hmm.
Beingness, the quality of being, that quality which most of us didn't get from our parents, you know, that presence. We have to be with ourselves. And when we can really be fully present, and when our doing comes from that space of being, spontaneously, then we get everything we need, because the world is basically abundant. You know, the rain falls abundantly, things grow abundantly, we have as much food as we need. In fact, everything in this world is basically made for us to have an incredible life. It's really paradise.
Yeah.
If we can approach it from that space of presence and beingness. So really, what we have to do is we have to be, and then do, and then have. But most of us are so busy running away from ourselves because of the subconscious stuff that we don't want to face, i.e. the shadows. We neglect our being and we go straight to doing, and then we get caught up in that loop of doing and having, which actually doesn't get us anywhere.
I know this loop. I was in that loop for about 39 years.
Yeah, why do you think I do this work?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so people who don't want to be stuck in the loop anymore, people who want to get out of the doing, having, feeling unsafe, feeling tense all the time, never being able to relax, knowing there's something more, knowing there's the state of liberation you can be living from, they can come to your retreat, and then what happens?
Well, this is the thing. What happens is you connect with your being, and what you find is that when you touch the essence of who you really are, you find that God, or whatever you want to call the divine creative power that creates continuously, is inside us. It's not something out there, as we were told, most of us. It's inside. And then you become creative. You become truly creative. And then you begin to contribute and to create and to play, rather than just being a kind of a voyeur, a consumer. And really that's what society needs. It needs more powerful people who are creating from a place of power.
Of beingness, yeah. So how do you facilitate that on retreat? How does the day run, and what kind of work do you do? I want the nuts and bolts, man.
Great. So in the morning, some meditation, followed by a little bit of physical exercise, or quite a lot of physical exercise, a good 2.5 hour yoga class. Pranayama, deep breathing exercises, yoga nidra, a good 10-20 minute yoga nidra to really, at the end, to really relax. Breakfast, bit of downtime, and then in the afternoon, the shadow work, the group shadow work. So basically, the way I usually work is a little bit, or a lot, spontaneously. You know, I see what's happening and how people are feeling and what's coming up anyway, because through the work that I did as a healer, what I found is that healing is a completely natural process. And unresolved stuff wants to be healed. It just wants to be healed.
That's that divine impulse, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
It's always wanting to surface,
it's,
wanting to be released, wanting. Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah, I was looking for the perfect analogy, and it kind of came to me now. It's like when you get a splinter under your skin, body pushes it out, and really these blockages, these subconscious, the subconscious stuff, the baggage, and so on, the shadows that come from trauma, they really are like things under our skin. And they're always pushing. Our being is always pushing to release them because they don't belong there. Just like a splinter doesn't belong under the skin, the body pushes it out. The same with the subconscious blockages. Our being wants to get it out, so it will always find
the perfect situation.
The perfect situation to show us that we have a splinter in our mind. So, for example, that's why many people just keep repeating the same kind of relationships. They find one abusive partner and they leave that, and then they find another one, because really what they're doing is attracting abusive situations to show them that they need to heal abusive patterns in order to be able to have a healthy relationship, for example.
Awesome. So you're on retreat, you're doing this work, and it's group work though. You're not working sort of one-on-one with people on the retreat, are you? Or
it's group work.
Yeah,
it's group. There are moments when, if I see that somebody is open to it, then the group will focus on that person. And that's very powerful, because it's not just me healing that person, but the energy of the whole group. Of course, in order to do that, there has to be a level of trust, and everyone has to be pretty grounded, which the yoga helps with. But if I see that there's that possibility that we can really quickly help somebody to release something, and if my work as an actor helped me to really identify, because I did a lot of work with audience participation, and you can only do that when the audience member is really feeling safe and comfortable. Otherwise, you make them feel unsafe and uncomfortable, and that's the worst thing in the world for an audience to see, is somebody on stage making somebody in the audience feel bad, you know. So yeah, if I see that somebody in the group is able to process something in a certain way, then sometimes we work a little bit individually, but otherwise we're just doing group stuff.
Awesome. So who is the retreat suitable for? Do you have to have experience in yoga to come, or do you have to have, know that you've got this traumatic thing or that traumatic thing to come?
It's suitable for anybody, beginner yogis and advanced yogis. If you've never done yoga before, you can come. The way I structure my classes and the way I teach is I work with whoever's there. So I might be teaching a class, and there might be somebody in a headstand or a scorpion, and the beginner I'll be guiding them through warming up exercises to prepare them for the headstand. And by the end of the week, usually people are doing headstands, So anybody can come. Really, you just have to. It's not the kind of retreat where don't expect to be pampered. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in kind of making people feel good about themselves for 7 days. It's really about having a great time, having loads of fun, meeting people, getting to trust people, and taking off the mask. Taking off the mask, identifying identifying the stuff which has been making your life less than joyful, and being prepared to face it and confront it and release it. So it does take a lot of courage, and not everyone has that kind of desire to really to do that.
Yeah, because it's not always, it's not comfortable to face one's own shadow, and because you need to sometimes feel those feelings and go into the darkness, don't you?
Yeah, you do. But I think that, yeah.
But on the other side, But out the other side, it's good, yeah.
That's
it. It's amazing. I think, too, once you've done that journey once or even twice, once you realise that, wow, going into it, and yeah, it gets really tough sometimes in there, but coming out the other side, there is such a sense of liberation. And then you realise the next time it comes up, it's like, oh, I can do this. I can do this.
Does it get tough in there? I don't think it does. I think the toughest part is when you're not facing things. It's a little bit like when you're in a dream and there's a monster behind you and you're running from that monster. And, you're in a state of complete panic and terror. And usually that dream ends with a wall or a bridge that's broken or something. And then you turn around and there's nothing there. Or it's a rabbit or something, And it's the same with this kind of work. The shadow is much more terrifying when you're not looking at it. It looms larger, doesn't it, when it's behind you?
That's true.
When you turn around and see it, it's just a shadow. It's nothing. It doesn't really even exist.
It's just learning how to turn around. knowing how to turn around. Yeah.
Well, it's having the courage to turn around, because before you turn around, there is that fear.
Yeah.
But once you turn around, you see that it doesn't actually possess the qualities that you thought it's not really you. We're really afraid of ourselves. We think that there's a part of us which is not acceptable, or that we can't face, or that we can't show other people, you know. When actually, every single time when you do see it for what it is, it kind of dissipates already.
Yeah.
So I think the hardest part is before you do this work. Once you start doing it, it's not that bad. It's actually quite fun, I think.
Yeah. So the hardest bit might be signing up for your retreat, and then it's just gonna be awesome from then on in. Cool. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your passion for trauma work and for telling us about your retreats, and for sharing yourself with the Yoga Lunchbox audience.
Thank you.